Jonathan, do you want to start by asking about getting guests' names?
Sure. I've been sort of trying to keep track as people have come in. Let me just make sure there's nobody here that I don't have.
Okay.
I think I've got everybody at the moment, so I think you can go right ahead.
All right, very good. Good morning, everybody. My name is Thomas Elmore. I'm the chair of the Connecticut Historic Preservation Council, and I'm calling to order the November 3rd, 2021 Historic Preservation Council meeting. With me this morning are the following council members: Beth Ackley. Beth Burgess is coming if she's not here already. Paul Butkus, Marguerite Carnell, myself, Leah Glazer, Christine Nelson, Vice Chair, Sarah Sportman, and Walter Woodward. We have a quorum, so we'll begin the meeting. The following is the Historic Preservation Council's format and review of public comment procedures. Given the online format of today's meeting, and for those who are visitors today, I want to review and explain our procedures. The order of presentation. I will read each motion and ask for the motion to be moved and seconded. Staff will present the agenda item to the council. Council members will have an opportunity to ask questions. If called upon by staff, a representative of the organization may offer statements or address council's questions. For members of the public who wish to speak on the agenda item, we ask that you identify yourself and your affiliation. After all questions have been addressed and statements made, a roll call vote will be taken. If members of the public have letters and/or written statements they wish to submit for the record, please email them to Jonathan Kinney, and his email address is at jonathan.kinney@ct.gov. The Historic Preservation Council takes statements from members of the public but does not respond to questions. Lastly, please only address the particular agenda item being addressed at that time. The following is the Historic Preservation Council's policy regarding conflict of interest. The Historic Preservation Council votes on matters which provide leadership, service, and economic benefit to property owners, consultants, local governments, and not-for-profit organizations. Given this responsibility and to maintain the highest professional standards in the discharge of our duties, it is important to maintain a strong code of ethics for all council members and department employees. In order to avoid possible violations of the Department of Economic and Community Development ethics statement, it is necessary for the council to be aware of any situations in which there is a real, potential, or apparent conflict of interest involving anyone here. Conflict of interest may occur when a public official's participation in agency matters results in personal financial gain. All council and staff have been provided a copy of the Department of Economic and Community Development's ethics statement and governing state statutes. Having reviewed them and today's agenda, members of the council and staff are now asked to disclose any affiliation with entities or projects that may create a conflict of interest as defined by agency policy and pursuant to Connecticut General Statute 1-79 through 1-89, entitled Code of Ethics for Public Officials. Once disclosed, the member or staff may recuse themselves from that particular agenda item. Having read this statement, are there any council or staff members that would like to disclose a conflict of interest to any of the items on today's agenda?
This is Beth Ackley. I don't necessarily think this will go in that direction, but I just thought I would bring it up for the Amity and Woodbridge Historical Society, the Thomas Darling House Cow Barn. I was, and when that project, the first part of that project was done, the conditions assessment, I did submit a proposal for that. It doesn't look like that's a conflict of interest now because the intention is to, with this application, go with the consultant that they've been working with. So I don't think it's one, but I just wanted to put it out there.
Thank you, Beth. Yeah, I agree. I think this is with regards to moving forward, not looking in the past.
Yep.
Are there any other members of council or staff? Very good. First item on the agenda is a review of the meeting minutes. The meeting minutes were provided to council members in Dropbox. I'm assuming everybody's had a chance to review them. I know Marguerite had submitted some minor edits to Jonathan, but does anybody else have any questions, comments, concerns, edits? Paul?
Tom,
Yeah.
I was just asking if it's possible to have the addresses for the threatened properties added to the meeting minutes. Just having a town name kind of leaves an incomplete record as to what we're talking about. And as a new member, I don't personally have the history of understanding all of the updates, but I think just from anyone looking at the meeting minutes in the future, just having a town name is a little bit incomplete.
Sure. So you're talking specifically about the threatened properties
Correct.
report from Todd.
Correct.
Okay. Yep. Sure. No problem.
Anyone else? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the minutes with the revisions as noted and submitted by Marguerite?
Marguerite, so moved.
And a second?
Paul,
We have a motion to approve the minutes. I'll take a roll call vote. Beth Ackley,
Aye.
Beth Burgess,
Aye.
Paul Butkus,
aye.
Marguerite Cornell.
Aye.
I will abstain. Leah Glazer,
Aye.
Christine Nelson,
Aye.
Sarah Sportman,
Aye.
and Walter Woodward.
Aye.
Very good. Motion carries. Thank you. First item on the agenda is a little bit different than what we would normally do. Item 5B, new actions, is Jenny wants to talk briefly about the National Register process, and she's feeling a little under the weather, so I believe she's going to say something or submit some comments, but we're going to do this in full depth next month, hoping that she'll feel better.
Yep. This is Jonathan. Just to reiterate what Tom said, Jenny's going to put some information for everyone in the notes. In the chat for the meeting, and then she'll follow up with the presentation next month. She's just, her voice is not what it should be, so we're going to let her get a chance to rest.
Thank you. I'm just going to note that real quick, we do have a regular program of National Register updating. It's something that is part of the National Register program that we do all the time. And since we have so many older nominations, we're actually working through the Circuit Rider program. Stacy Vero is going to be doing a project to help analyze the data we have on existing nominations and help me prioritize what needs nominations the most. But whenever we have a grant or tax credit project, or if we can get something done through environmental review, we are always looking to do an update. I'll put some, I was hoping to give you more of a presentation on what an update is and how that works. So I will put some notes in the chat, but just wanted to let you know that it's something that is critical to SHPO, critical to our programs, something we do all the time. And also just wanted to note that we have about 500 nominations in the state listed by 1982. Some of them were actually listed, recognized as National Historic Sites before the National Historic Preservation Act of '66. So we actually had some resources here recognized before we even had the framework federally for this program. And just on that note, you have to understand what these documents were at that point in time. Early nominations are not wrong. They were a reaction to what people were trying to accomplish at that moment in time. So while we have very robust, thorough documentations now through the National Register program, in 1966, that was not the goal. In 1966, it was, let's identify what we have that's worthy of preservation per the National Historic Preservation Act as fast as we can. With the idea that, I mean, that was a general identification effort and picked up the things that were easiest to find without doing a lot of research. So I just want to put that perspective out there, that it's not that they're incorrect at the time or that they were missing things at the time. It's just it was used as a slightly different effort. So I'm going to put some notes in here. I'll do a better presentation next time. And if you have any questions when this item comes up on the agenda, we have a grant application today. Just let me know.
Great, Jenny. Jenny, you should know that I had this exact conversation yesterday afternoon with somebody who may be coming into you to update their old nomination.
That's great, because we have about 1,700 National Register listings in the state. We have 4 state review board meetings a year, and there's only one of me. So there's only so many updates I can get through in a given year. So just keep that in mind. We're not going to be processing 2,000 of them in one swoop.
All
We're
right.
going to do it as we can.
All right. Moving on. Next item on the agenda is item 5B1. The Historic Preservation Council votes to recommend the award of a survey and planning grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of the grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. The applicant, City of Norwalk. The project, update to National Register nomination form for Lockwood Matthews Mansion, dated 1868, located at 295 West Avenue, Norwalk. Grant amount of $15,000. May I have a motion to move this to the table for discussion?
Paul?
A second?
Marguerite.
And a discussion from staff? Hi, Mary.
Good. Hi. Good morning, everybody. Staff recommends approval of this application, and as Jenny noted in her introduction, we have a lot of nomination forms that are earlier on. This one actually was, I believe, listed as a landmark in 1970, which is over 50 years old, and then it was I think that same form was used to list it on the National Register in 1983, which still makes it almost 40 years old. So I think it's great that the city wants to come in and initiate the update on their own. I mean, they will be hiring a qualified consultant to do it. But as Jenny noted, this is an important initiative that SHPO has undertaken. And so any additional help we can get from other parties is welcome. I believe David Westmoreland is here from the city if he has any questions that I can't answer. Any comments, concerns, questions?
Great. Council members, anything? Yes, Leah.
I just wanted, based on, coming off of Jenny's comments, a lot of the reasons for the updating is, yes, a more thorough historical review, but also to try to make sure you get in different contexts. So since this is a mansion and it's kind of in that mid-19th century era, I just wanted to, and it didn't mention anything explicitly about explicitly searching for, the other people living in the house, servants, whatnot, just to make sure that you get a full history. It's not just about the owners, but about, everything going on in a house like that with all the issues of race and class that might come with it. I just encourage that be part of an RFP or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So this is David Westmoreland, if I could comment on that. In 2017, we completed an extensive permanent exhibit on the staff who worked at the mansion under both the Lockwoods and the Matthews eras, as well as the people who constructed the mansion. So we're obviously, we're very attuned to that. That's actually been a very popular exhibit for us as well. So there's a lot of interest from the public. So I absolutely agree with you on that. I would just say also, not to take up too much of your time, When this was done, this was about saving the building from destruction because the city wanted to build City Hall, tear it down and build City Hall. But one thing that didn't happen is we didn't include any of the outbuildings, which are also architecturally significant. And unfortunately, over the years, we lost, I believe, 4 of the outbuildings, but we still have 4 left. So we're looking to expand the nomination in addition to updating the information about the mansion, but also include all of the outbuildings. So those are protected as well and available for grants and so on and so forth.
David, I would like to suggest that while you're focusing on the outbuildings, please include commentary on the landscape and other critical character defining features in the landscape so that those don't disappear over time as well.
Absolutely. And we actually have a master planning effort underway for a new park master plan. And the key part of that is being driven by, we've already documented all of the features that existed that no longer exist and what does exist. And so we'll be taking a look at that and including that as well. But thank you.
Great.
I have a comment too, Christine Nelson. Looking at the photographs of the wall that surrounds the property, it was interesting to see the modern background, the high-rise apartments and so forth. So it might be interesting to include some commentary about the context of the mansion and how it sat within the community, you know, over time, and how that has changed and what effect that might have had on the mansion and the family and so forth.
Certainly, I mean, the biggest impact, unfortunately, was the construction of I-95 and Route 7, where we lost, I think, like 12 acres of land.
Yeah.
But yes, you're absolutely correct.
Anyone else questions? Paul, I have a question for you. Is there going to be some new research as part of this, or is all this information going to come out of the HSR and the updated HSR?
We'll be looking at everything with fresh eyes. We've done a lot of other research recently for our interpretive signage program and the Matthews Park master plan that I mentioned. So we're going to kind of take a look comprehensively and, you know, try to make it as complete as we can based on what we know now.
Sounds great. Anyone else? All right, David, we look forward to reading it when you're done.
Thank you.
So if there's nothing else, we'll take a roll call vote to approve the application. Beth Ackley?
Aye.
Beth Burgess?
Aye.
Paul Butkus?
Aye.
Great Carnell?
Aye.
I will abstain. Leah Glazer?
Aye.
Christine Nelson?
Aye.
Sarah Sportman?
Aye.
And Walter Woodward.
Aye.
Very good. Motion carries. Good luck, David.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is item 5B2. The Historic Preservation Council votes to recommend the award of a survey and planning grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. The applicant, Amity and Woodbridge Historical Society. Project, bid level drawings to support the restoration of the Cow Barn outbuilding on the Thomas Darling property circa 1765, located at 1907 Litchfield Turnpike in Woodbridge. Grant amount is $4,100. May I have a motion to move this to the table for discussion?
So moved, Beth Burgess.
And a second?
Marguerite, second.
And a discussion. Hi, Mary.
Okay. So staff recommends this application for funding as well. We awarded a grant to Amity and Woodbridge about a year ago to take a look at several outbuildings that were located across the road from the Thomas Darling House. And they did complete that assessment, and they've decided that their priority need is to move forward with restoration of the cow barn as described in the application. They did competitively select this consultant the first time around, so their budget is fairly is accurate. It is a matching grant, so the total cost would be $8,200. And Alexia Belperon is here to answer any questions that I can't.
Questions from council members?
I have one question. Is there an efficiency of approving the entire project through construction versus just the documentation phase? It seems like I wasn't sure why there was a, just the very first level of documentation.
Well, the construction phase is not considered planning. It's considered, so we don't usually fund the actual administration of the project. So these plans should be shovel ready or ready to submit to an HRF grant application.
Okay. But
then the cost of actually administering the project would either be as part of the HRF grant or paid for by the applicant.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions?
I've got a quick question, Beth Ackley. I might have missed it, but I wasn't clear on what the scope, if the scope for the cow barn was like the sort of immediate stabilization piece or the whole shebang of what GNCB found in their report.
Alexia might be able to correct me, but I actually, it's my understanding from the consultant that it is the whole shebang, or not,
Yep.
not just stabilization. But
Yep.
I'd feel better if I'm not right.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for having me. Yes, the goal is actually to get these to do an HRF grant, and it will be for everything for the cow barn and really what we call now the cow barn complex, because you'll see in the engineering report they have separated out an L addition and a shed addition, both old but part of that. So the goal is to do an HRF grant that will include everything that's needed for that whole structure.
Great, thanks.
Anyone else? All right, hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote to approve the application. Beth Ackley,
Aye.
Beth Burgess,
Aye.
Paul Butkus,
Aye.
Marguerite Carnell.
Aye.
I will abstain. Leah Glazer. Leah?
Aye.
Thank you. Christine Nelson,
Aye.
Sarah Sportman,
Aye.
and Walter Woodward.
Aye.
Very good. Motion carries.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is 5B3. The Historic Preservation Council votes to recommend the award of a survey and planning grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. The applicant, First Church of Christ Congregational. Project, architectural plans and specifications to support priority restoration and repair projects for First Church of Christ Congregational, dated 1872, located at 190 Court Street in Middletown. Grant amount for $20,000. May I have a motion to move this to the table for discussion?
Paul?
Leah? All right, and
Christine, second.
okay. So, Deborah, I got Leah for the motion and Christine to the second. And a discussion, Mary?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
The motion to move it to the table was Leah Glazer, and the second was Christine Nelson.
Okay, so it wasn't Paul. Okay. Thank you.
So staff recommends this application for approval. This is a matching grant, so most of the grant would go to the architect. This will be competitively bid if the grant is awarded. I don't believe there's anybody here from First Church of Christ in Middletown to speak to the application. We did award them a grant last year to get the to list the property on the state register, which they just completed. So we're glad that they're now moving forward, trying to take advantage of our funding incentives that go with listing. I don't think there's anybody here from the church, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that I can.
Okay. Council members, any questions?
Mary, this is Beth Burgess. I'm just questioning the specific activities listed under number 5 of the application. So it sounds like they're really looking for someone to just come together and tell them what really is a priority within those 4 bullet points. There are potentially other issues, one would imagine, that would arise from the review.
They have not come to us for any other pre-development, like a condition assessment or anything like that. However, I believe over the years they have done assessments by church volunteers that are professionals in the field, which I believe is also how they came upon the budget amount that they're asking for. Okay. So yeah, we generally, Aaron and I did meet with them on site, and we generally do ask people to take a step back and get a condition assessment first. But they have identified these as pressing needs. Sure. But we can certainly ask them to, get a broader picture.
Might be worth it in this case. Yeah. Thanks for that.
So since Sarah Nelson's not here, Mary, based on what you just said, it begs the question, this grant is specifically for plans and specs. And what you just alluded to was an assessment of things that aren't going to be included in the plans and specs. And therefore, I guess I'd be concerned that there's some project creep and therefore their budget is not going to be sufficient.
That's a good point. I know that when Aaron and I went out there, it's not comprehensive. However, it does cover things like exterior woodwork and windows and then of course the accessibility issue. We can, because they're going to bid this out, we can work with them on the RFP to make sure that it's very specific. Yeah. That still doesn't always, human factor that still doesn't always preclude scope creep, but we can keep an eye on that with the grantee if they get awarded.
Great.
Mary, I've got a kind of a similar related but not totally question. Have they mentioned or has there been discussion about how the assessment and repair of the stained glass would be designed? Will there be a specialty consultant that would come in for that?
We have funded at least 2 specifically stained glass repair projects, and then they do, you're right, require specialists. I believe in this case, and we've also funded something to this effect, it's actually just a protection system against vandalism, or, it's not the stained glass itself. However, if they do a condition assessment, obviously the windows would be a huge part of that. And then if they wanted to move forward with a grant, they would obviously need to hire someone with an expertise in that.
Okay, I see. I missed the fact that this was the actual protection of the windows. Okay, gotcha. Thanks.
Anyone else? Questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote to approve the application. Beth Ackley?
Aye.
Beth Burgess?
Aye.
Paul Butkus,
Aye.
Marguerite Carnell.
Aye.
I will abstain. Leah Glazer,
Aye.
Christine Nelson,
Aye.
Sarah Sportman,
Aye.
and Walter Woodward.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. Motion carries.
Great, thank you.
Next item on the agenda is 5B4. The Historic Preservation Council votes to recommend the award of a supplemental certified local government grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. The applicant, Town of Westport. Project, update historic resources inventory. Grant amount for $30,000. May I have a motion to move this to the table for discussion?
So moved, Christine.
I'll second Walt.
Okay.
Okay, and a discussion, Mary?
So staff recommends approval of this application. We do offer non-matching grants for historic resources inventories and updates to inventories, and that goes for anybody, or not anybody, but nonprofits or municipalities. So there's no match required here. We do know that consultant fees are rising as with everything else, but we generally expect to get a survey that would consist of at least 150 forms, a comprehensive context statement about 25 pages long, recommendations for the National Register, and then a section on any resources that are related to women and minority history. So the price tag, I think, is fine. They're updating an inventory that was done several years ago, and it just wasn't complete. It didn't include a lot of what generally goes into a survey. So the plan is to update the existing survey, and then if time and funding permit, do just a quick, they call it a windshield survey. We don't really do windshield surveys anymore, but just a look-see to see what might be missing from their general resource. And the resources inventory is really just an information gathering tool to let a municipality know where there are important resources, historic resources, architectural resources, so that they can keep them in mind during development and planning. So we do recommend that Westport undertake this. And Donna Douglas from the town, I believe, is here to answer any questions that I can't.
Any questions from council members?
Leah, Mary, did we fund the last one? And how do we make sure that this one's complete this time?
We did fund the last one, and we made it clear that it wasn't a complete project, and so so they are coming back for additional funding. What was funded the last time wasn't, completely inadequate. It did gather information on many buildings. It just didn't include everything that a general survey should, a standard survey should. And so now we do have, anytime a grant-funded deliverable is completed, it's submitted to our office for review. And so if it is not adequate, we send it back to the consultant for corrections. So I'm confident that's not going to happen this time.
And also, you have the part about anything significant to women and minorities, but just to make sure that, the way these have been done in the past, they've been pretty pro forma, and yep. Just that people are looking for different contexts and different areas of significance than maybe they have in the past. Just really emphasize that it's not just about necessarily the architecture or the famous owner, but other associations.
Right, and you're correct that the section related to that history is generally maybe not pro forma but brief. and so it would be, we can recommend that the forms themselves include any information that's, that they find. So that would, because the form itself has a brief architectural description and a fairly brief historic description or historic significance statement, but there is a continuation page, and we can certainly require that because that is a goal of the SHPO plan as well. We can certainly require that a more concerted effort be made toward that research and reflected in the forms themselves, not just a one pager.
Right. And on that note, just to, it's hard to look away from the big, nice, maintained houses, but if we want preservation to be, broader than it's been, need to look at the working class, working class homes, the smaller homes, even the ones that aren't have some siding on them or have been, altered in some way.
Well, that's exactly the great thing about the historic resources inventory is that it is meant to investigate all styles, periods of significance, and definitely it doesn't always take into consideration integrity. So if you see the form of a vernacular worker house, you put it on the survey, even if it's vinyl sided or it has its porch removed or whatever. It definitely, that's the great thing about the historic resources inventory. There's no restrictions or benefits applied with it or that go with it, but it's just a great way to let a municipality know what's potentially important and what they should be taking into consideration, definitely.
And owners, so that if they want to
Yes.
do anything, at least they might understand that they have something special there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Beth Ackley, I see your hand is up.
It is, but I think Christine's was up before me, so I'll go.
Oh, that's all right. I'm not in a hurry.
Well, go ahead.
Okay. Is Donna available? The applicant?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Hi, Donna. I worked in a town hall for a long time, and I found that the building department could, be a good ally in preservation and in keeping the culture of preservation. And I wondered if, do you feel like you have a good working relationship with the building department?
Yes, we do. We do. We work with them mostly with the demo applications that come through. And which is our biggest issue right now is that I have 12 demos coming on to our HDC meeting next week rather.
Yeah, I read that in your letter. So maybe include the building folks in your your consultant selection committee.
Mm-hmm.
And just a suggestion. And also maybe somebody of a, more like I don't know what structure of government you have, a selectman or a mayor?
Selectman.
A selectman. Maybe a selectman, because a lot of times people who are looking for a demolition are in the selectman's office, and the selectman, if they've participated in this process, can be, nice spokesman up front for the culture of the city in town in, maintaining historic integrity. A little politicking. That's all I have.
Great, thanks, Christine. Beth?
I have another question for Mary on this. Being relatively new on the council, could you just give a quick background on how much, it sounds like what I'm hearing that SHPO provides a framework for these inventories with the form and some requirements of what's involved. So I'd just love to just hear a bit about that.
Okay. For the form itself or just the survey in general?
Well, I guess both, just
Okay.
to understand. I mean, it's such a great resource. I mean,
and I will be happy to, we can share the form that we prescribe. But it's generally a two-sided form, and it includes a picture of the house. We also, or the building, the structure. And with continuation pages, we encourage additional photos and additional information on the history and architecture. It has a description of the materials, the type, the style, the location, the condition. I don't have it in front of me, but that's, you know, a lot of detail about, and it's generally done from the street. These aren't interior, these are, you know, so so that's generally on the front. And as I said, there's an architectural description and significance, and then an historic significance. The form itself gives just a you know, a small box, but again, the continuation sheet is meant to be more in depth as needed. And that, I believe, if Jenny's still on, she might be able to pipe in with more information. But it's meant to describe the building, including its condition and location, any threats to the building, and then give information about it and a visual.
I can add that the form we use, it's consistent with, you know, all other states. It allows for different levels of collecting information. So you might be doing a reconnaissance level where you're just checking off the boxes just to identify that something exists, or you might be doing a more intensive survey, in which case you would add a lot more on the continuation sheets. And that format is normal in the cultural resources industry. I will just add the timing of this does not work for this project, but I am working on some architectural survey guidelines and updating our inventory forms. I'm just not ready to roll that out at this moment, since I've been busy with digitizing and creating our GIS platform. But just know that that's coming. Tom knows we have a separate landscape project, and we'll be rolling out a separate landscape inventory form in the future. But I'm hoping to put all those updates together in one package so it's not confusing, because you're seeing the surveys that are being done through the grants, but we also have surveys that are done on the other side for regulatory reasons. So just know that updates are coming one thing at a time.
Any other questions from council members? Oh, Paul, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I believe Westport has something like 7 local historic districts. Will these new listings fall within those districts, or are we expanding beyond the existing local areas? And of those existing local districts, how many are on the state register? Because my experience with historic resources inventory is there are usually recommendations that you know, certain neighborhoods become state recognized districts, because the best thing that we can do is actually identify a property and a neighborhood. And, you know, as Leah was saying, the house may be worker housing with vinyl siding on it, so it wouldn't stand for individual listing, but if it's within the district, it would then become eligible to actually get it back to something that would be, you know, more historically appropriate. So it's sort of not having the you know, the onus of a local review without the benefits of being eligible for tax credits, typically is a you know, a discouraging factor for many people to actually preserve these buildings. So whatever we can do to encourage these local governments to actually take the next step and follow the recommendations from this process for historic resource inventory updates, and actually, you know, get things into recognized districts, even if they're just on the state level, it's a huge benefit for homeowners, especially if we can kind of work in, you know, owner occupied and, you know, for multifamily, and really, you know, turn the tide of, you know, municipalities that have too many rental housing and no one's interested in investing in these buildings because they're just sucking money out because they're all rental properties. You know, it's a little different in Westport, but as a general goal of these efforts, that it doesn't do enough of just putting things into a book that sits on the shelf, and people perceive that, well, it's on the list, that it's a historic resource, but there's nothing that can be done with that, as a benefit to the homeowner.
Right. No, that's a good point. We do think that the surveys are very important, though, because they are a good, initial information gathering tool. Up until a couple of years ago, anything that was in a local district is automatically listed on the state register. So there is that financial benefit. But the sort of purpose of the survey is to get out there and see what you have. And then you're right, though, we do want to encourage following up with any recommendations that are made in the survey, but also, if we see patterns, that indicate a district that could be on the state or national register, we can encourage that. Very often towns, not very often, but sometimes a town will start with the survey with the intention of creating a district from that survey. So, and some towns do, and I think Westport might be one of them, they do link an historic resources inventory listing to their demo delay, which is allowable. So, but you're right, there's no financial benefit to just being in the survey.
And just continuing Paul's point, and what you guys are already doing at the SHPO is just, trying best as we can to sync, to fill that gap between the survey and what Erin's doing with the tax credit, expanding the tax credit program. Because there's that leap going from the survey to being able to take advantage of that, which is a pretty important one. And we just got to figure out a way to get people there, to get towns there,
Are there any other questions? Mary, I have a question for you. It kind of builds on what Paul started with. Are you expecting this survey to be citywide or neighborhood specific?
We generally do them geographically. So it might be, if the original, I believe the original was a town-wide. So if they're going to update that one, it will affect the whole town. And then any additional properties they might see along the way. But that's how we generate. We don't recommend surveys that consist of 17th century houses, or we generally, it's a broad survey. So
Okay. All right. Great. If there are no other questions, we'll take a roll call vote to approve the application. Beth Ackley?
Aye.
Beth Burgess?
Aye.
Paul Butkus?
Aye.
Marguerite Carnell?
Aye.
I will abstain. Leah Glazer?
Aye.
Christine Nelson?
Aye.
Sarah Sportman?
Aye.
And Walter Woodward.
Aye.
Congratulations, motion carries.
thank you.
The next item on the agenda is 5B5. The Historic Preservation Council votes to award a stewardship relief grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown below. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Purpose: basic utility costs per grant guidelines. The applicant is the Cheshire Historical Society. Grant amount for $1,000. May I have a motion to bring this to the table? Move this to the table.
It is Cheshire. It is Cheshire.
Thank you, Leah. And a second?
Second, Christine.
Okay. Who was the first?
Leah Glazer.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Ma'am?
So for the many of you that I don't believe were around about a year and a half ago, once with the shutdown associated with the pandemic, we the Historic Preservation Council voted to approve a new grant program called the Stewardship Relief Grant. It was meant to encourage stewards of historic buildings to keep paying the bills, you know, the electric bill, the water bill, things that pertain to the maintenance and maybe not preservation, but the maintenance of a house, because obviously, you know, you turn off your heat, you know, the water freezes, the pipes burst, and the historic resource suffers damage. But because of the shutdown, so many nonprofits were, and this is available only to nonprofits, so many nonprofits were thrown into great fiscal difficulty, and you know, hard decisions have to be made. So we offered this matching in the sense that they have to produce evidence that they paid, you know, the amount of money they're asking for. It did cap at $1,000, and they needed to spend at least $500. So this is one such application. Just on another note, we will be discontinuing the program. The final HBC meeting where these might be presented would be the January meeting, unless the council decides that they'd like to extend it. But we don't anticipate a whole lot more. So this is Cheshire Historical Society, who did incur well over $1,000 worth of bills. And so we do recommend the funding for them.
Mary, not to put you on the spot, but maybe you can just elaborate a little bit about how many of these grants we did approve for the new members here, so they get an idea of really how helpful this was.
We, to date, have now close to 50 grants. You know, when we first introduced the program, we did have a program cap of about 200,000. So we were actually anticipating, you know, a lot more, but and it was, and there were meetings, which I'm sure, Tom, you remember, where we had, you know, 20 applications to this. And we have, you know, through outreach, we have reminded people that it exists. So maybe the good news is people are on the fiscal upswing, you know, in their organizations. But in any case, you know, I think we can consider it a success. I think every single awardee was super grateful to have gotten this little bit of help through such a difficult period. But yes, to answer your specific question, we're around 50 organizations.
And will this be the last month that we'll see something, or when will it be discontinued?
The technical deadline is December 10th for consideration on the January agenda. So we may see some in December. I know that January is you know, is going to be a big HRF month, but hopefully if we have stewardship relief grant applications, we can squeeze them in. Unless, again, I mean, I guess because we're not getting a huge demand, maybe that means the program has run its course, but it's at the council's discretion to extend it if they think it would be helpful or would like to do that.
Okay. Paul, I see you have a question.
That was left over from last time, but but I do have a question. I think it would be worthwhile redacting bank account information from the documents that were submitted.
Yes, in fact, I generally don't include any of that, and my apologies for that. In the past, I would just submit the narrative and the request, and then attest that the bills reconciled with the request. And yeah,
Mary, with that discussion, can you get somebody to go in right now and get that off the website?
Yeah, yep. I can do that, or I can wait until we vote, but yes.
I would delete it now and then resubmit whatever is required. Because I agree with Paul, I didn't pick up on it, but I didn't study those documents either.
Yeah, yeah, it's in, the only place it's public is in our Dropbox. It's not posted on the web or anything, but I can pull it out. Yeah, I can pull it out for sure.
All right. Any other questions or comments from council members? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote to approve the application. Beth Ackley?
Aye.
Beth Burgess?
Aye.
Paul Butkus?
Aye.
Marguerite Carnell?
Aye.
I will abstain. Leah Glazer?
Aye.
Christine Nelson?
Aye.
Sarah Sportman?
Aye.
And Walter Woodward.
Aye.
Very good. Motion carries.
Thank you, thank you.
The next item on the agenda is threatened properties. Todd Levine.
Hi, folks. How you doing?
Hey, Todd.
Just a quick update. Norwalk is 1 Old Kings Highway. Currently, their demo delay expires December 30th, and the Attorney General still has not made a final decision on what they're going to do. But putting the building up for sale appears to be a prudent and feasible alternative. So I imagine something is going to happen. The owner has reached out to us. We're trying to schedule something with the Attorney General's office and the owner to see if we can come up with an agreement. Bridgewater is 11 Main Street South, and there's no change. It's listed for sale, and we haven't heard from the municipality if they've gotten any bites on the listing yet, but they still have until the end of the year. And then there's a new one, which is 2283, 2289, which is one address, and then 2289R, which is a building behind it on Main Street in Glastonbury. These are both buildings that are contributing resources. Demolition delay has been enacted by the locals. Brad Scheid went out there last week and met with them, with the community. I met with the developer and the municipality yesterday. There's a big new development coming in, and these buildings are in the way. We're trying to work out an agreement where they're going to keep the buildings, but it is tied to local ordinances, so it's kind of complicated there. There's a requirement for parking, and there's a requirement for a certain amount of commercial space that's got to be used for commercial. And we are looking for a way to maybe do some modifications or variances. So that demo delay expires December 16th. We're working with the owners to withdraw the demolition permit application, resubmit immediately, and then that starts the 90 days again. So that's where we ended up yesterday. They said they would. So November 15th, they're going to withdraw. At least they said they're going to withdraw the demolition permits, the permit application, and then right away put them in again, which gives them another 90 days. If they don't, then this will be on the agenda for next month. Any questions? Thanks.
Thank you, Todd. Next on the agenda is report on the State Historic Preservation Office. Jonathan?
Good morning, everyone. A couple updates for you. The first thing I have is just a couple quick updates from our tax credit program, which my colleague Julie Carmelik provided. This fall, so far, the tax credit program has issued over $1 million in tax credit vouchers for 3 projects. The first one is the Hillstead Museum in Farmington, and that is going to be for the rehabilitation of their historic carriage barn and drive shed. The second is 94 Edwards Street in Hartford. That's the rehabilitation of a historic house into 5 apartments. And the third is 125 Hillside Avenue, in Waterbury, and that's going to be the rehabilitation of a historic house into 8 apartments. So some interesting projects going on in the tax credit program. I also just wanted to share some news on 2 preservation events I went to in October, both fantastic preservation outcomes, which I wanted to share with council. So October 15th, Friday, October 15th, here at the SHPO office, we had an event where the Archaeological Conservancy and the New England Hebrew Farmers of the Emmanuel Society held an event where they co-signed a donation agreement that gifted the synagogue parcel of the NEH-FES Synagogue and Creamery site, which this council has reviewed in the past and provided funding to for work and designation as well. They're donating that parcel to the Conservancy, ensuring the protection of the site in perpetuity. The history of that site began in 1892 when a small enclave of Russian Jewish immigrants established themselves as the New England Hebrew Farmers of the Emmanuel Society. In 1894, the group wrote a democratic governing constitution and proceeded to thrive as a close-knit religious, social, and economic community of more than 50 Jewish families well into the 1930s. Preservation of this site will contribute to public knowledge about the site's significance and the importance of cultural resource preservation. The preserve will be maintained as an open space research preserve and protected against any future development. As I said, council had been involved in that. It was a long time collaborative effort between SHPO and a multitude of other organizations. Catherine Labadia was very involved. Labadia was very involved in that work, and also she moderated the event on October 15th, did a great job. So thank you to council and to all the SHPO staff that were involved in that process. And also the next day on October 16th, the Trust for Public, I'm sure some of you are aware of this, the Trust for Public Land and the town of Simsbury held a ribbon cutting ceremony for a plot of land that is now known as Meadowwood. This was once the site of a tobacco farm where Martin Luther King Jr. worked as a college student in the 1940s, and that experience had a profound effect on him and his future in the civil rights movement. And that site will now be protected for its historic and cultural significance to the state's civil rights history. The Trust for Public Land in the town recently acquired the 288-acre parcel after Simsbury voters overwhelmingly authorized $2.5 million to purchase the property over the summer. 130 of those acres will be set aside for recreational access, and 120 acres will be used for working farmland. The rest will be saved for the future needs of the town, and 2 acres will be kept for historic preservation purposes to tell the history of the property. That effort involved multiple state agencies, a long effort involving a number of organizations, and again, SHPO has been involved for a while. Todd Levine was a speaker at that event. And thank you to all the SHPO staff and our partners who worked diligently to make that event happen. That work will continue as we work with the town to stabilize the tobacco sheds that remain on that site and ensure their future viability. Any questions?
Yeah, can I just,
I'm sorry. This is Jenny. I just wanted to mention that that happened because of Kathy Labadia and her bridging between groups. I just wanted to throw that out because the result is incredible.
Yes, it is.
I second Jenny on the, the importance of kind of communicating the links and stuff. So I just wanted to add that if there's any kind of article or any, kind of programming that continues to make these links between sites, my synagogue, which went on the National Register in March, just commemorated this week Martin Luther King's visit to the synagogue, which he was supposed to dedicate, but came this year. And so, his visit to Connecticut, which had over 1,000 people, they actually brought in the guy who was bar mitzvahed the night that he spoke. And, all these other people who were young and barely remembered like what he talked about. But anyway, just to make all those connections in terms of, obviously civil rights goes beyond MLK, but his MLK's kind of activity and presence in Connecticut. Just wanted to put that out there.
Cool. Thanks, Leah.
Jonathan, is that everything?
Yes, thank you.
Next on the agenda is the report on museum properties. Liz?
Hi, everybody. So it's a pleasure to be here. It's November, yay. And for us, November means that the museums closed last weekend for Halloween weekend. At this point, everybody's working on putting their sites to bed, but next month, I should have some pretty interesting visitor and sales statistics to share with you about the season. We're super interested in sort of comparing the comeback of our museums to museums across the state. And relatedly, the Office of the Arts has just sent the final report requirements to all the museums who participated in the Summer at the Museum, the Kids Free Initiative, the Governor's Initiative that was managed by my other team. And those reports are going to be due in December. And then at that point, we'll have access to a really great select set of data for over 50 museums in Connecticut. Because I know a lot of you work with small historic sites or big historic sites, I did want to share that if you have not heard about the operating support program that Connecticut Humanities is running in conjunction with the Office of the Arts, That is called the Connecticut Cultural Fund Operating Support Grant. I will put a link to that into the chat when I'm done. They offer, that grant offers unmatched grants. So there is no matching requirements of at least $5,000 to history, arts, and cultural nonprofits. There's a pool of $16 million available this year and probably another 8 for next year. It is a non-competitive grant. The deadline for the application is November 15th, and the application is very simple. The bottom line for these funds is that we're looking to attract as large a pool of applicants as possible to apply, because that's going to give us the biggest and most complete data set on the sector that we've ever compiled. It's an amazing public-private partnership. Connecticut Humanities has hired a data specialist to work with them. I've been actively involved in the process, and so I would just ask that you share the information. I'm hoping by now the sites that you work with and know and love all are aware of this, but big sites, little sites, all sites should apply. Because there's going to be a specific data questionnaire that everyone will have to answer before they can execute the contracts and receive their funding. So that is about that particular fund, and I'm always happy to take questions about that. Just to give you an update, the job application process for the museum curator position that has an education specialization closed yesterday on November 2nd. I haven't seen the applicant pool yet. I haven't seen them, but I did hear this morning that we had 83 applicants. So that's a lot of applicants. What is going to happen next will sort of delay the process because of the number of applicants, but a firm that the State Department of Human Resources works with will create a set of what they call required questions based on our preferred qualifications. Those will be sent to all the applicants. The applicants will have a certain amount of time to apply to answer the questions, essentially. If they do not answer, they're removed from the pool. Once they do answer, then the applicants are sorted, and sort of the applicants that don't qualify and meet the minimum qualifications are removed from the pool. So that gives us a smaller pool to work with. The hiring process in the state is fairly complicated and layered, and it is time consuming. I think that we will probably be interviewing by the second week of December, but I think it will take pretty much the month of November to complete that process, especially with Thanksgiving week in there. A couple of specifics as to the museums, just to keep you updated. The substantial completion at the Prudence Crandall Museum is set for November 12th, and I think that's a set date. We have a walkthrough on November 16th, so that is very exciting. We'll find out what hasn't been included in the substantial completion. I've been getting pictures regularly, but if you're interested, and depending on what the meeting schedules are, Jonathan and I would be happy to share some pictures of the site at one of the upcoming HPC meetings, depending on the scope of the agenda. Also at the Prudence Crandall Museum, we've received the report prepared by Kathy Crogwell-Varda that I mentioned last month that details how we should best go about storing the current collections on the property while we're managing both the deaccession and the reinterpretation project. This is going to be pretty time consuming, but we will be emptying all the storage containers into selected spots on the museum campus, and the museum will open to the public in the late spring. I do want to note that the former staff room, if you've been there, still is sort of the area of the museum that has not had work done to it. It somehow, in creating the scope of this project, it kind of ignored, and so it used to be a kitchen, and we're going to be removing all the old cabinetry and replacing the floors in that room and painting that room. So that room will actually probably look the most completed and new when we finish. It doesn't have historic materials. It's been redone and quite a few times, but that work is going to be a separate project, and hopefully it will happen this winter. And of course, I'd like to take a moment to recognize the work that SHPO staff did. So thanking particularly Jonathan Kinney for his work assisting Joni and attending meetings, and all the SHPO staff, and particularly Marina and Kathy and Todd, who have been really there at the museum staff's kind of beck and call, because we've needed a lot of help with this project. I wanted to quickly mention Andrew Rowand at the Eric Sloan Museum has been battling sort of the regular issues that come up, including alarms. When you install alarms in a barn, in a building that basically moves, things are bound to go wrong. But the coolest thing is that the Early American Industry Association regional meeting was held at the museum on, I think, Saturday, October 23rd. They had over 40 people attend, which was like record high attendance for them. They came from across New England and the Mid-Atlantic as well. They were extremely complimentary on the work that staff's been doing, and had high praise for the work and commitment of SHPO with the museums. And it was really the first event that the museum has had for as an outside host to another's meetings. So breakfast and lunch was served outside, and it all worked really well. The museum has also been doing record gift shop sales. So this summer, this whole season, but on that particular Saturday, they sold over $1,500 worth of merchandise with about 67 visitors total. And they've crested the $5,000 mark for October sales. That's unprecedented for that site. So I think that Andrew really is a salesperson. I think that may be what his real avocation is. And I did want to share a report. He sends me weekend reports, and they're quite funny. And the one for the October 23rd was no exception. And what he wrote was 67 visitors total yesterday and 1 bear. Luckily, most of the visitors had left, and the bear stopped by as we were cleaning up. And then I see pictures of people with the bear walking not that far from the building. So not unusual in this day and age, but we do have interesting visitors to all our museums. And then finally, just to touch briefly on Henry Whitfield and Old Newgate, they have the most substantial outdoor closing procedures. So they're in the midst of that now. We have a new mission that we're testing for Henry Whitfield Museum, which Michelle has really led that charge. And Morgan Bengal at Old Newgate is also reworking that museum's mission, which is exciting. And staff, essentially the way that works is staff work mission, and then we work as a group, and that's pretty much how that goes. But overall, I'm really looking forward to sharing more news about this past season's visitation, as well as the museum, the work that the staff has set for themselves and for us as a team for 2022. And that is including a museum-wide statement of core values and beliefs. So just kudos to a wonderful staff who's done really an exemplary job on reopening their sites this season. And I really feel like the museums are beginning to take their rightful role as leaders in the Connecticut museum community, which is really exciting. So I'm happy to take any questions, but thanks for listening.
Liz, this is Leah, and yeah, that is all exciting. I just wanted to ask one question and mention something. When you take the cabinets out, are they in decent shape? Can you give them to
No, horrible.
They're horrible. They need to be trashed. Okay.
They need to be trashed.
Just sustainability wise. And then one of my colleagues in the public history world is working on a book about sites of incarceration and stuff. So I told her that I'd put her in touch with you guys. So that's just a heads up.
Oh, great. I guess I should also share. Thank you for that, Leah. That's great. So Connecticut Humanities also has they have a new initiative to sort of lead. I've shared that our museums have become members of the International Coalition of Sites of Conscience, but Connecticut Humanities is working on another project to begin to identify sites in Connecticut as a collective that would qualify as sites of conscience. And we've been working with a group of people from across the state. There's probably 20 of us involved, 25 people having these conversations for over a year now, led by Braden Painter at the Sites of Conscience. And the 5 sites have been picked, and Old Newgate and the Prudence Crandall Museum are 2 of them. Who are the other ones? The Old State House, I believe, is one of them. There will be one that is going to be associated with Indigenous people, and we're working with the tribes to decide which of some of the identified sites it will be. It may be the Tantaquidgeon Museum. And then the other is Maisa Tisdale sites down in Bridgeport. I'm just drawing a blank. What are they called?
Freeman houses.
Thank you. It just went away. So those will be the 5 sites. So we're having our first meeting in a couple of weeks. I don't know what this will look like, but it's kind of an exciting initiative.
Can I just add one little thing, since you're part of those discussions, and not, for now, but for later, is for several years now, there's been discussions about adding sites of environmental justice to sites of conscience, and just to have that on the radar.
That was on the table in our conversations.
Liz, I have a question for you. When do you think you're going to start working with that grant money that you got for Old Newgate Prison?
Oh, so I was going to leave that update for next month because there's not that much to say. But what I can share is that the initial RFP and there's 2 pieces to the proposal. You have to ask to have a proposal, and that has to be approved, and then you have to have an RFP. So there's like an RFQ and an RFP. It's very complicated, and those go to the Attorney General's office at the same time. So I believe that I have reviewed both of those. Kathy Labadia has reviewed both of those. So they may have already gone to our Office of Finance to be sent to the Attorney General's office. So if that is the case, I'll start to push things in mid-December. This is, in some ways, the timing of this is all crappy because depending on the Attorney General's office, as the holidays approach, is tricky. We all have a hard, people are out. Right. But I would expect January.
Great. Good. All right. Anything else, Liz? No? The next item on the agenda is...
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I had a question for Liz. Liz, I read it a few months ago about there's a program at Newgate for ex-felons. That they become business owners or something like that. Could you speak about that?
No. So what we work with all of the reentry roundtables and a couple of the community partnership and a couple of organizations. So at Old Newgate is the first site, the first physical location of the Connecticut Reentry Hall of Change. And so we've had now the 2020 and the 2021 inductees. That's 16 people who were formerly incarcerated who are now sort of working to create change in communities and across the state in Connecticut. There's one from each of the 8 reentry jurisdictions across the state. So, and we're working right now to create another secondary location in Waterbury, because the idea is that not everybody has cars and access to public transportation. So we want people to be able to go somewhere that's close to them, to be able to see themselves and their families honored, and to be able to do support programming around that. So we're involved in a group that is sort of the service group from the state and otherwise for reentry services, but do not have a necessary small business connection yet. That may be happening, but it's not involving us.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Next on the agenda is liaison with public and private agencies. Jane Montanaro.
Jane isn't here, Tom, but she did send me an email with her report. And if you don't mind, I'll read it for you.
Sure.
Okay. Preservation Connecticut report. She's just commenting on 2 funding opportunities for historical societies and museums. Just reiterating, the Connecticut Humanities is offering their general operating support grants available for museums and 501c3s. Municipal Connecticut state or Connecticut-based tribal nation organizations that provide cultural, humanities, and arts-based projects, and the applications for that program are due November 15th. You can visit ctHumanities.org for more info. And then the second update from Jane is Preservation Connecticut is once again partnering with the 1772 Foundation to offer up to $10,000 matching grants for small capital projects. The online portal to submit letters of inquiry is now open at preservationct.org. Inquiries are due by December 31st. Circuit riders are available for consultation regarding both of those grant programs. That's it.
Great, thank you. And Mary. Mary with us?
Hi, don't have anything to report for you this month. Thanks.
All right, great. Thank you, Mary. And I guess that the last thing on the, well, two things. One is to announce our next meeting in December is December 1st at 9:30 in the morning. And then the final thing is an adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn today's meeting? No? Okay.
So moved, Christine.
Marguerite,
Second,
second.
Leah. It's hard to unmute that fast.
Yes.
All right, so we're going to give Christine the motion and the second to Leah. Very good, everybody. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Have a good day.